Oh boy, this one got really heated. Didn't it get more passionate than you kind of expected?
I just, when it comes to Girls Gone Bible, I just like, I can't with them. I always end up getting really heated because I say the dumbest shit. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and this is my husband Drew. And on this channel, we talk about life and relationships after leaving the church and do some commentary on the goings on in evangelical Christianity. All right, so today we are going to be checking out a collab between arguably some of the worst people on the internet. So we're going to be talking about Girls Gone Bible. You guys all know what's going on with Girls Gone Bible. They're one of the most popular podcasts for Christian women in the entire world. And we've talked about them being embroiled in a lot of controversy earlier this year with working as escorts while doing Girls Gone Bible and also emotionally manipulating and emotionally abusing their fans. So that's Girls Gone Bible. You know them, you hate them. And they went on to the Chris Williamson channel. And I'm going to let Drew talk about who Chris Williamson is because he knows a lot more about him than I do. But the main thing I know is that he's a podcast bro type that's right-wing coded. And he used his YouTube banner used to be a picture of him shirtless flexing. So go ahead, take it away.
Yes. So Chris Williamson, some people say, is kind of like the British version of Joe Rogan. I'm not totally sure if the comparison is equivalent, but that might give you a little flavor of what people think. Some important things to know about Chris Williamson. For me, he is involved with working with atheist people that you definitely 100% have heard of and have most likely watched. And yeah, they really like him. I do not. Chris Williamson was a former reality TV show star. He brazenly supports eugenics on his YouTube channel. Yes, for real, look up Chris Williamson eugenics. You'll find him promoting it. During the 2024 election, he had on Brett Weinstein to talk about how Kamala is preparing for an ethnic cleansing and a cleansing of all intellectuals and academics from the population in the United States. He also spreads a bunch of anti-trans propaganda, totally anti-science stuff. He sells ridiculous supplements and, energy drinks and neurotropic drinks that are supposed to support neuronal growth and all this bullshit. And he makes every single guest put a can right next to them, as you'll see, including the ones that say that they're pro-science. So you can't really be pro-science and go on Chris Williamson, in my opinion.
I'm calling it woo-woo juice.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's woo-woo juice.
A final thing, I have said that Chris Williamson works with, platform supports right-wingers, people from the Daily Wire, like every Daily Wire host. That is completely true. That said, I am not going to maintain the idea that Chris Williamson has a coherent political ideology. Mm-hmm. I think Chris Williamson tries to make money.
Yeah,
and
he's an opportunist.
Yeah, and so being like a white man, what sells the best for the people that you're selling to, a certain type of conservative politics, even if he doesn't even believe in that himself. I think that his opportunism is very much shown in the fact that he loves working with atheists, and he says that they're his actual friends in real life, which I do believe. And then he also platforms people like Girls Gone Bible, who are theocratic Trump supporters.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they literally believe that Trump is God's vessel and God's arm in the world.
Yeah. So that's who we're dealing with.
Yeah. Just one of his recent videos is the 3 traits to get a top tier girl, featuring Alex Hormozy. Hormozy? I don't even know who that is, but the title is insane. But yeah, the format of Chris Williamson's stuff is he only does interviews. I don't think he does anything he doesn't make his own content, which I'm not going to say interviewing people or having a channel that's based on that is a grift, but we do see a lot more grifter types kind of gravitate toward that format because it's easy to pump out a lot of videos quickly.
Yeah.
When 95% of your content is based on another person showing up and talking and you're just asking questions.
Yeah.
I'm not like against interviews, but I don't know. I find them sometimes, channels that are completely based on that, I sometimes find a little questionable.
I feel like the biggest factor is that in order to maintain a channel that only has this one select type of relatively low effort production, you have to invite people who are sensationalistic, because those are the types who can hold people's attention for a long time and attract a lot of people in. And that's what, you know, Joe Rogan, that's what Chris Williamson, that's what Lex Friedman, that's what Andrew Gold, all these people do. They just invite people who are like fucking crazy, to be honest, so that they can get views.
Before we actually dive into the video, I did want to take a few minutes to thank the sponsor of today's video, the Paired app. You guys know that on this channel, we often discuss relationships and the ways that Drew and I cultivate trust and healthy communication in our relationship. And the Paired app is a tool we both use to grow together. So Paired is a relationship care app that offers daily couples questions, relationship games, quizzes, and exercises. And they're all designed to spark meaningful conversations and deepen intimacy. What's really cool is that Paired is backed by leading experts in research, so you can rest assured that the app is designed to bring you closer to your partner. Another really cool thing is that when you start a quiz, you can't actually see how your partner answered the questions until you both respond. It's very illuminating to see how your partner responds to different questions, because sometimes they'll answer things in ways that you're not expecting, or the questions might be ones that you never really thought to ask in the first place. The Paired app really is a great relationship companion. All right, so Drew and I actually just recently did the Partners in Fun quiz, and I thought we could talk about our results here.
Yeah, let's do it.
So there's 5 questions. The first one was, my partner and I can make even routine tasks enjoyable together. I think I put 100% on that one.
Yeah, I did too. I think that's one of the things that we're actually like the best at.
Yeah.
Like, we do a lot of our routine tasks together, and that makes it enjoyable.
Yeah. So we were both supposed to answer this for ourselves. I make an effort to bring lightness to moments when my partner seems stressed. And for myself, I put not 100%, but like, I don't know, it was like 4 out of 5 hearts, I think.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a lot better at that now, but I think at the beginning of our relationship, like, one of the things that we tend to do is kind of like, if one of us is feeling sad, we'll tend to get kind of in like a spiral together.
We take it on.
Yeah, because we're both very like empathetic people. And so I think at the beginning stages of our relationship, sometimes I would kind of fall into that rather than trying to like.
Well, it's not something you were taught how to do or manage, but I will say that I think you're really good at it now.
Thank you. We create opportunities for spontaneous enjoyment in our day-to-day life. Like, we have a lot of spontaneity in our relationship.
The number of songs that we make up throughout the day about random things, and sometimes they turn into metal vocals, and we're saying about like the piggy, to be honest.
Yeah. And it says, great work, both of you. And it asks, did this conversation bring you closer together? I think so.
I think so.
The Paired app is great for new couples that are in the early stages of their relationship, but it's also great for partners who've been together for longer, like Drew and I. It helps us connect on a deeper level rather than falling into monotony in our relationship. If you've been looking for a new way to deepen intimacy in your relationship, I highly recommend trying the Paired app. If you click the link in the description box below, you can get a 7-day free trial and 25% off Paired Premium. There's really no time like the present to start working on your relationship and improving your communication as a couple. A big thank you to the Paired app for partnering with me on this video. Now let's jump into this. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a train wreck. All right, so the video, I think it's just a clip that's taken from a larger interview, but this one's called Submitting to Your Husband is Strength.
You mentioned that there was a tension between what girls are being encouraged to do, the way that they're encouraged to live their lives and show up, and what you think is a more wholesome lifestyle that you guys have gone into. Yeah. What's that tension there? What are the issues with modern culture for women?
Yeah. What are modern cultures for women? What is the issue with for women in modern culture? Yeah, I think that, modern women now are like, I don't want to. Sorry, my phone. Let me just put this on. Do not disturb. Modern culture says, I don't want to go by the rules. I want to live how I want to live. I don't want to submit. Like, I want to live by my own truth. I think they read the scriptures wives submit to your husbands, and they stop there and they're like, wait a minute, I'm not doing that. I'm not submitting to him. But if you keep reading the scripture, it says, men, love your wives as Christ loved the church. What does that mean? Christ loved the church. He died for the church. So men have a way huger responsibility than women. Men have to love their women, have to be willing to die for them, right? And so
Ugh, I feel like evangelicals like them, this is the point that they bring up when people say that they don't want to submit. They're like, oh, well, the Bible talks about how, the husband's supposed to love the wife as Christ loved the church. And so, like, you're both having to do something.
Yeah.
And my whole thing with that is, for one, women as wives, you are supposed to and obviously want to love your husband too. It'd be kind of crazy to be in a relationship with somebody that you don't actually love, in my opinion. But also when it comes to the husband having to lay down his life for his wife, in what circumstances is that ever happening? Like, that would be a very, very rare circumstance where a husband would have to, like, put himself in between his wife and, like, her future death. Like, when is that going to happen?
Right.
Versus with wives having to submit, that's like something that you're having to do every single day. Like, there's an actual, like, obligation and commitment there, versus with husbands, it's like, hypothetically, in this hypothetical situation,
Just not going to happen.
which is probably not going to happen, you might have to die for your wife and your family. But women, we actually have to submit every day. Like, there's practical examples of women doing that.
Yeah. Also, we know that historically, this passage has been used to directly excuse and allow for abuse of women by men, especially in positions of spiritual authority. So a lot of the time they like to have discussions of, well, like, the Bible says this, and if you just applied it, then everything would be great. And it's like, I don't think we can have a conversation about, like, what this text says without actually discussing what it has motivated historically and having a conversation about that. That is having a realistic conversation about the text.
Yeah.
You divorce it from reality, from actual practical situations, then we're not having a real conversation at all at this point.
It's kind of like idealism. Like, they're idealizing the verses and thinking hypothetically in these situations this should work out really well.
Yeah.
Kind of like I see, like, in The Handmaid's Tale, I think that at the beginning, Serena was very much bought into a lot of the conservative messaging that she was pushing, and wives staying at home and wives not being able to read, and, like, husbands taking the authority role in the family life and public life. I think in her ideal world, she saw that as potentially working, but then when you actually go to implement it, obviously the world's a lot more complex and they like to make it seem, and it doesn't work, and it just kind of ruins the lives of everybody involved, including men. Like, if patriarchy is horrible for men too.
It's not, it's this beautiful partnership of, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to submit to you because I'm trusting that you're going to love me like Christ loved the church. So we look at it like it's weakness. Like, I have to submit to him and I have to be weak. No, that's strength. That's me trusting you. That's humility and selflessness. And so I think just it's been so misconstrued. And look, we don't want to ever be doormats, right? If we're sometimes we make bad decisions, we get in the wrong relationships, and we don't want to ever take abuse, but that's why we choose wisely, and we choose people that love us like Christ loved the church, that would give their lives for us.
So I think the problem here with her model and way of thinking is that if you get into an abusive relationship, you don't have any recourse. There's no way for you to get out of that situation, because now that you're in that marriage, you're supposed to submit and look to him as your authority figure. I mean, you can marry somebody fully thinking that they're a great person and not having any indications that they could end up being abusive, because anybody can act nice and sweet for, a set amount of time and then switch on a dime once they're, attached to you.
Yeah.
And so, the reality is that shit happens, and there needs to be a way for women to be able to get out of those situations without their church or their family or their community holding these verses over their head saying like, no, well, you married him and you're supposed to submit to him now.
Yeah, absolutely. This system they're setting up just sets up the community to blame women for everything.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, that's the intended purpose of it.
it's like, oh, you're getting abused? Okay, well, the problem is you either, are not submitting the correct way, and maybe you kind of deserve it because of that. All right, Aunt Lydia. Or you just chose wrong, and that was a misjudgment of yours. It's like, no, life is more complicated than that. That's ridiculous.
I think that's the thing, is that just life is way more complicated, and every single relationship and situation is going to be different, and you cannot have these like hard and fast rules like the Bible kind of prescribes and expect them to work in every single relationship. Like that's just, I don't know how you like can be an adult and not realize that. I don't know.
Maybe if you feel very comforted by the hard and fast rules.
Maybe.
Is that devotion piece why you think people are so unsatisfied with modern relationships? What's going wrong with modern relationships from your perspective?
Oh, Chris, what's gone wrong with modern relationships?
I mean, we are here in LA, so this is...
we're in LA. Where do we start? Can I just add one more thing to that? Because I think this is really important. There's just been such an over-sexualization of not even just women and men. Things have been truly so, go drive around LA, look at the billboards. Everything is so overly sexualized. And we live in a culture where that's glorified, glamorized. And again, they say like, this is liberating, but really it's the opposite. It's so true. And then...
Need I remind you guys that both Angela and Ari were working as poker girls, which are basically escorts in the LA poker scene for years. And part of that job is, for lack of better terms, sexualizing yourself. Whether you think that that's okay or not is kind of beside the point. And somebody that they used to work with said that they were working this job as escorts basically for months after they started Girls Gone Bible, and they were having 3-way escort dates. And I'm sure that you guys can surmise what that means.
Yeah.
So for them to sit there and say that, the problem with modern relationships and the modern women is that they're trying to sexualize themselves and it's all about like glorifying sexuality and that kind of thing. It's like, you're one to talk. And I don't think what they did before was wrong. And I don't even think that them working that job and also having a Christian podcast was wrong. The problem I had with it is because when they first started their podcast, they were saying shit like this.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't like guilt women over the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah. And funny enough, I was going to make a similar comment about Chris Williamson. So Chris Williamson got his celebrity out of being on the reality TV show Love Island.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's a reality TV show star on a dating and like sexualized, dating show. And his whole gimmick was that he was ripped and he like always had his shirt off, just like in his banner at one point. And he's still, the gym bro type and like sexualizing the male form and all that kind of stuff. And so I think what it shows you here is that if you understand the place and the careers of the people that are having this conversation, what it shows you is I don't think they really care that much about what they're saying because their actions speak louder than their words, or as they should. And I was taught that in Sunday school by fundamentalist evangelical Christians. And you know what? I agree with them. I do think that you should let someone's actions speak louder than your words, especially when they're talking about relationships. So this is clearly a cash grab on both ends.
Right.
The political philosophy here or spiritual philosophy means nothing. It's just window dressing for making money.
I mean, this collab totally makes sense in light of that because all three of these people were hustling, trying to build a career for themselves, doing kind of the opposite of what they're doing now, and then realize at a certain point, oh, if I start talking about this like conservative Christian bullshit, I can also like gain an audience that way. Like clearly that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, they were doing one form of selling themselves for a wage, which something that we all have to do, unfortunately, to now they're doing another form of that, but they're saying that they're not.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I got a comment recently on one of my Girls Gone Bible videos someone was saying that they know a Girls Gone Bible fan in real life, and they were talking to them about Girls Gone Bible, and that they asked them if they had heard of any of the allegations or how they felt about that. And apparently they said that they didn't, like, they hadn't heard anything. They didn't know anything
Oh, wow.
about anything, which is kind of surprising because Girls Gone Bible has addressed some of it.
Yeah.
Like, the tip of the iceberg of all the allegations they addressed. So it's kind of surprising that they didn't know anything about it. But I think it just goes to show you, like, still how much we need to work to kind of spread the word about what's really going on with them, because, you know, they also spoke at a Trump rally and, like, were abusive towards their fans. Like, there's so much to it. And you guys, like, my viewers, probably know what I'm talking about. But it's just, I feel like their fans are in such an echo chamber where they can't.
I mean, they're also probably like 14 years old.
That's true. Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah.
factor.
Most of my audience is between, like, what is it, like 25 and 34. So yeah, that makes sense.
In terms of dating, I think, of course, the progressive movement has tried to make this whole, like, men and women 50-50, we're equal sort of thing. And what's so beautiful about the original design of Jesus, you got to read this book, Chris, I'm telling you, because it'll change your entire life. Because you literally can read God's original design for man and woman, husband and wife, and you see how much it makes sense. You see why there's harmony. Men and women were not created 50-50. They're equal in value, yes, different in role, different in function, different in strengths. You know what I mean? It's not... we literally have gotten into this thing in modern dating where we're like this. Men and women are against each other. We've pit women and men against each other, saying the future is female, and the poor men are like, what about us? You know what I mean? You're a man. I plan to hopefully have a son one day. I can't imagine my son having to live in a world where he's like, the future is only female. That doesn't even make sense.
You are so dumb if that's what you actually think. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I try not to be too, like, mean and whatever when it comes to Girls Gone Bible, but, like, obviously, like, the saying, the future is female, is not saying that in the future only women will be able to do anything or have any type of voice.
What are we going to do without men?
The reason we say that is because historically, throughout time, women have always been discriminated against.
Yeah.
And so saying the future is female is to say the future includes voices of women. That's what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll also say, I think it's really funny that she was saying, you know, if you read God's original design for men and women, then it's this. And then she explains essentially just a snapshot of a theological view called Complementarianism, which was founded in the mid-'80s, 1980s. So,
relatively new.
Yeah, the idea, the theological idea that she's talking about, you know, men and women are created differently, they're equal in value but different in role. That theology is younger than our parents.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Ronald Reagan was in office when that was invented.
Yeah.
So it's it's original.
Creationism.
But,
it's a relatively...
Yeah, young Earth creationism was essentially invented in like the 1800s. But
still relatively new.
So, like, yeah, but that's another example of when people say, well, the original text says this and this is the... No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Somebody made it up, and it's probably done for the express purpose of boosting up certain white Christian businesses.
You know, it's just this whole progressive movement that creates so much confusion and so much division. Men and women were created to, like, work beautifully and harmoniously together, not against one another, but complementing one another. And so you see in dating, men don't want to be men, women don't want to be women, and so everything is messed up. It's chaotic, and that's just the truth. You come into a beautiful, Jesus-loving, godly relationship, and you see how beautifully it flows, because you see a man be a provider, a protector. You see lay down his life the way that Christ died for the church, and you see a woman be like a beautiful, nurturing, loving, building up type of woman. And it just flows. Why are we going against the natural design? Yeah. It's just insane.
I mean, maybe it seems chaotic to you, but is it actually sowing chaos? No. Like, practically give me examples of how that's actually causing chaos in the world. I think the only reason that you think it's chaotic is because it's scary for you to see other people defying like biblical gender roles. That's a scary thing. And so you're like, oh, it's so chaotic.
Yeah.
It's like, really, you just don't like people that think differently than you. And that's it. And also, I hate to break it to you, but America was founded on secularism, that we are not a Christian nation. I don't really care what your Bible says about what men and women need to be doing. Why should I be beholden to what your religion says? Why are you going to impose your standards onto other people that aren't, adhering to your religion? If that's how you want to do your relationship, fine, you can do that, but why are you forcing other people to do that?
Yeah. The way that these people often provide evidence of sorts for the fact that the model they're laying out works is that they say, like, hypothetically, this would be really good, wouldn't it? Doesn't it just kind of make
Does
sense?
that sound good?
Or they, point to someone that's either real or, in this case, hypothetical, of saying, if they're doing this and they're doing this and they're doing this, then it works really, really well. And you can talk to anybody who has that kind of relationship. I'm like, okay, who, first of all?
Yeah.
And second of all, is that more than one? Is that an entire body of data? Can we actually somehow study this empirically, aka like have some kind of a statistical analysis of this? Because you can study relationships on a large scale.
Yeah.
Like, it happens. And if you're right, then the evidence should actually bear that out in like scientific study. And yet they never actually go to any of that because that's not what empirical data, like actual scientific study, suggests. There's actually a good body of literature that suggests that basically growing up in purity culture and getting married in the context of purity culture actually predicts unhappy relationships and divorce.
Yeah. I think the rates of evangelicals divorcing is higher than like the general population, I'm pretty sure. I haven't looked at those studies in a while, but last time I looked, I think that's what it showed.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just, this is an incredibly irresponsible way of talking about relationships. And again, I don't think they care, because I don't really believe that anybody in this video ultimately cares that much about the subject.
No.
They care about making the video to get the views, to get the money.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we are a prime example of a couple that doesn't do gender roles the way that they think that you're supposed to, because honestly, I think that you have some of the more like feminine traits that she was mentioning, like being nurturing.
I'm definitely the nurturing.
You're much better with kids. You're a lot better when it comes to like the feelings. We say that he does the feelings.
Yeah.
And then I have a lot of traits that are, stereotypically masculine. Like, I'm really good with directions and like organizing and that kind of thing. And yet we have an extremely healthy relationship, in my opinion. Not to toot our own horn, but
Well, I think we can a little bit here.
I mean, we've been married for like 10 years.
Yeah, we're about to have our 10th anniversary, and yeah, we've been together for 12, and we've had a healthy relationship the whole time. So.
Yeah.
Is there a tension, do you think, between faith and modern femininity? You've got some reconciliation that needs to happen between biblical womanhood and some of the progress that's been made to give women independence in the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a tension going on there?
Yeah, I mean, listen. Take it from two working women who have jobs, who love to work and who are in ministry and love what we do. And there's just like this pushing of hyper independence that I think is so damaging. I think we were created as human beings first to be so dependent on God. Like, we are supposed to be hyper dependent on Jesus. And then as women, we were created to be in surrender and in submission to a man's authority in marriage. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think obviously we've lost that with, I'm not going to speak on the entire progressive movement because I'm not knowledgeable on all of it. I don't know everything, but from what I do understand, the one area that I see an issue is this place of hyper independence. I think it's damaging. I think it's harmful. I think
being dependent on people that you love and trust is a beautiful thing. Take it from someone who's been hyper dependent my whole life. And then following Jesus, getting into a relationship with a beautiful, godly man who, I'm not married, so I'm not under anybody's authority, but like as it trends that way, you see the safety in a relationship like this, and it begins to make sense. I don't need to fight for power. I don't need power. I'm not looking, Jesus didn't even fight for power. I don't need power.
But we do
Girl, you like haven't even been dating this guy for longer than a year. I don't think that you should be holding up your relationship as an example of one that's like thriving or that you know is going to be thriving in the future, because you haven't been dating that long.
Yeah.
But also the hyper dependent, hyper independent, like the progressive movement or like feminism doesn't push like hyper independency. I think obviously progressives and feminists and myself believe that you should have your own autonomy and be able to advocate for yourself. That's something that's really important. But I mean, everybody needs to have relationships. Everybody is dependent on other people, but that doesn't necessarily have to be your husband. You can get that from like your parents or just like your friends or your chosen family.
Yeah.
There doesn't need to be this like, and who do they think that men need to depend on? Just like God, and that's it?
I think so. Yeah. Or their male authorities in the church. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
When these kind of like biblical anti-feminist types talk about like too much independence or, you know, the progressive movement or feminism has done this and this, they're always very vague. And I want to ask, you know, like, so do you think that it's good that women can vote? Do you think it's good that women can have a bank account, which they were only able to do in the 1970s in the United States?
Fucking crazy.
Do you think that it's good that they can hold political office? Do you think that it's good that they can be professors? Do you think that it's good that they can have any position in the church at all? Do you think that it's good that doctors see them as not being, in all cases, the physical and intellectual inferiors of men? Do you think any of that's good? Okay, then you should be thinking like the progressive movement or feminism from the last 100 years.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so there's a reason why I think they're very vague with this stuff, because I think if they got into specifics enough, then even their, you know, like very conservative Christian audience of like young women realistically would say, wait, but no, it's good that we're not considered to be intellectually inferior to men. It's good that we can have our own bank accounts. It's good that we were allowed to own property and vote.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why they stay so ridiculous and vague about this. They're almost saying nothing. They're just broadly gesturing toward progressives are bad.
And that's the thing, is that they don't know anything about feminist theory or like feminist history at all. And they're simply just repeating, like, we have to bear in mind that both of these women are also actresses. Well, were. I don't think that they do much acting anymore, because I think they're making a lot more money doing what they're doing now.
A different form of acting.
Yeah. But it's almost like they're just reading a script and they've embodied these characters that they've based off of other evangelical leaders that they've kind of observed.
Yeah.
And you can especially, like Angela, she seems really, her acting is down pretty good. With Ari, you can tell that she defers to Angela for a lot of her talking points. That's pretty clear. She's obviously is not very informed or knows the evangelical space that well. But yeah, I think that they're just repeating stuff that they've heard from other people. And it also is really ironic that the fact that they're even sitting here with Chris Williamson and have the careers that they have is because of feminism. And so they're willing to take from the benefits of feminism and the work that feminists have done and progressives have done. They're willing to like capitalize on that, while at the same time, like simultaneously, like berating it.
Yeah.
Understand from that other side, because I remember being in relationships and feeling like I have to fend for myself. I need to work. I can't depend on him. The minute he takes it away, I'm going to be left alone. And I'm going to be like, I remember being in a relationship, the minute something went wrong, he'd pull it away. You know what I mean? And so I remember feeling like, well, I have to take care of myself. My mom taught me, you better have your own, because anyone could leave at any time. So there is that other side where we have so much compassion. We do understand because the world is crazy. I'm single right now. Dating it's very hard to find good men these days, so we do see the other side of women are scared. They are. And so we have so much compassion as well.
It's all well and good talking about, in an ideal world, this is how the design was previously set. We have a book that explains it. This is a good blueprint for you to follow. Practicality comes along and people have painful relationships, painful breakups. They're left cut adrift. Women are financial prisoners or, no longer financially independent. So they have to stay in relationships that they don't want to be a part of. And I think it sounds fantastic in principle, but I wonder whether in the modern world it's compatible in practice. And I wonder, there's obviously going to be a difficulty for some people to commit to something like that, because I think, well, this makes me very vulnerable.
Totally. And there's no blueprint as in like a woman has to stay at home and a man has to go to work. I plan to get married and still go to work. You know what I mean? It's more of like
well, but what if your husband says that he doesn't want you working?
Yeah.
You're supposed to submit to him and follow his lead.
Right.
Like that's the problem.
She totally was laying out a blueprint earlier. And then they're also, again, they're shitting on like feminism and the progressive movement or whatever they want to call it. But the reason why she can do that, especially as a Christian woman, is because feminism has come along and said, yeah, you can work and have whatever kind of relationship you want as a woman.
Yeah.
Like she's benefiting from feminism right now.
Yeah.
It's just, I speak, and there's so many beautiful relationships where a man stays home and a woman goes to work. We're not remotely saying that that's wrong or this is right. What we are saying is that there is a natural flow to a relationship where somebody has to, would you agree with this, Chris, that somebody has to lead?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Always.
You can't have two leaders. Have you ever tried to co-lead something? It's really hard.
Well, you want to have one person singing harmony and one person singing lead.
Right.
If both people are singing lead, it doesn't sound very good.
Exactly. Yeah.
So was Chris, like the way he worded that question initially, was that just to kind of give the impression that he was being skeptical about what they're saying? Because obviously he does buy into, women submitting to men because he thinks that there has to be hierarchy in a relationship, which... Okay, people that believe that, I'm like, okay, your relationship is not a business.
Yeah.
The idea that there has to be relationships and hierarchy, or there has to be hierarchy in relationships, I really feel like it's a product of capitalism and capitalistic propaganda.
Yeah.
Because that's the way that like businesses run and operate in the way that they're able to like make money for capitalists.
Yeah.
You know that you can collaborate and work together mutually. There doesn't need to be one who like makes the final decision, because if you're in a loving and healthy relationship, you should be able to talk things out together and come to an agreement together.
Yeah.
There doesn't need to be one person who's like the decision maker of the family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, we certainly will defer to each other. And, if we're trying to navigate, to go somewhere physically, we're traveling, Taylor takes the lead.
Yeah.
That's because you're good at it. And I'm not like horrible at it, but you're better at it than I am. And so it makes sense for you to do that. And when there are other things, then like I'll take the lead. But that's a decision that has been reached collaboratively. You know, it's, tell me what you think about this. I'm noticing that they do a little trick here. They'll talk about cooperation and trust and collaboration. All the things that we're saying are good. We would agree with them are good. And then they're equating them to like godliness, or they say that those things are only to be found in a godly relationship. Then they say a godly relationship is necessarily hierarchical. And so in that way, they say the only way for you to find trust and love and goodness and compassion is to embrace brutal hierarchy. Like that's the uncompromising hierarchy is the only way that you can actually get to anything good.
Yeah.
Like that is the path that they're taking their viewer and listeners down, right?
Right. I would think so. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, Chris Williamson is a typical manosphere guy in the way that, yeah, he's very much like, yeah, natural hierarchies exist and we must find our places within them as men and stuff, which is why he promotes eugenics.
Are you saying that it's like they're speaking out both sides of their mouth?
No, not necessarily. I don't know that they think that they're doing this, but I'm just saying that they will say that like all the good things are God things and all God things are also related to hierarchy. And so therefore, all good things are a product of hierarchy. And so I'm not saying that they're speaking outside of
It's kind of like
both sides of their
circular
mouth.
reasoning.
Well, it's more just that they are trying to say, like, argue that all good things come from hierarchy without saying all good things come from hierarchy. It's like a snuff. They're sneaking the argument in by
I think they're
equating.
definitely doing that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
A lot of what they're saying sounds really similar to things that we've heard Mark Driscoll say about like hierarchy and authority and submission in marriage, where he'll say to his audience that you need to uphold this like model of, you know, the man, is in submission to God and the woman's in submission to man. And then he'll say, but this will work out for you because if you're with a loving man, then he will look after your needs and, invite you to be part of the decision-making process in your relationship. And in my opinion, this is kind of like trying to, instead of like uprooting and replacing kind of this broken system that we know just by looking at practically how this works in a lot of relationships, because this is not something that's beneficial for a lot of people. Instead of just completely replacing that with a system where things are more equitable, they'll try to just like slap a Band-Aid over it and be like, well, but a husband will be nice.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of saying like, well, some of the slave owners were really nice to their slaves, so it's okay. It's like, but that doesn't justify them owning people.
Yeah,
like just because some husbands are going to be nice to their wives doesn't justify this model of submission. It's still inherently unequal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so one person leads, the man is called to lead their household in what we believe. And so it's just, and that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to be the breadwinner. It's like all of this can't be boiled down to any sort of construct or like cliche.
Or solid examples.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, for real.
You're saying a man needs to lead, but you're also saying, but that doesn't mean he has to be the breadwinner. Okay, like practically, what does that mean then? Or are you just saying it because that's what your conservative Christian audience wants to hear?
And again, the reason why we need to have these conversations within the broader context of how these principles have historically been applied and what effects have come from them is that if we had that conversation in this way, if we seated this properly in its historical context.
Sorry. Piggy's snoring really loud. Sorry.
It's okay. Then we would see that what she's saying is nonsense.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because the reality is people have said that, yes, you do have to be the sole breadwinner if you're a man. You do have to lead everything if you're a man. You do have to submit to your husband in all ways if you're a woman because of these principles. And that's directly what they lead to.
Yeah.
You know, people have applied this principle in that concrete way most of the time.
Yeah.
And so if we're just going to go on things like this and pretend like this, I mean, you're almost saying nothing. This is absurd.
That's kind of what Girls Gone Bible does. Or like, it's a lot of fluffy words that don't really mean much at the end of the day.
I also think that there's a lot of men who preach the same thing that they're preaching right now who would say, it does mean that like the man can't stay home. Mark Driscoll talks about how if you're a man that stays home, you're wimpy and weak and woke.
Yeah, and like beta and stuff.
Yeah, and like you have to work outside of your home.
Yeah, and they like Mark Driscoll. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they've reposted Mark Driscoll stuff.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the problem with trying to get relationship advice based on verses from the Bible that can be interpreted in like 1,000,001 ways.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe don't do that. Maybe try to base your relationship off of stuff that you've actually observed in the real world, or not that you have to like base it on like scientific studies, because who actually bases their relationship on scientific studies, but like observable things rather than like just verses from a Bible that could mean anything you want them to mean.
Yeah.
But that's into the reason that is so difficult is that you have a modern world now where for most people you need two contributors financially. You have had gains for women recently. Education, Title IX, there's nearly 2-to-1 women to men going to college and university. And I think the pushback feels like, well, hang on a second, we just got access to socioeconomic independence and equality. And you're now telling me that this is something that I'm supposed to submit, I'm supposed to be devoted. Like, this feels like a regression. This feels like you're sort of pushing me back. And I think that that's a tension that a lot of women will feel.
Yeah.
Which is, I like the idea of being led. I like the idea of maybe being cared for. This sounds really lovely to me. But also, I like the idea of being independent. And I don't like the idea of being at the mercy of someone who I don't get to control.
Right? Totally.
It's the weird thing about careers that I think one of the reasons that people prioritize careers over relationships is that only you can leave your career, but not only you can leave your relationship, right? Your career doesn't leave you in that way. And I'm aware that I'm going to guess you would say it's less fulfilling. This isn't where truth is, et cetera, et cetera. This isn't devotion. This isn't going to fulfill you in the same sort of way. However, people come from a place of fear.
Totally.
And when they do that, they look for something that feels like, okay, well, at least this is secure. This is safe. I can hold on to it. It's in my control.
Yeah, totally.
I felt like that many times. Yeah. But again, like, I'm just going to go back to, it doesn't mean you have to give up your life. It doesn't mean I believe that so much happiness, like, God gives us purpose. God puts us in situations. God gives us things so we can, it's not like God wants us to just be home and just completely submitted to a man. That's been misconstrued. That's not the truth, and that's not what God says.
Yeah, but like historically, that's what the Christian church has taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So like you can think that all you want, but still you're advocating for a system that puts all of the power in the hands of men. And then you're reassuring your viewers, don't worry, like you'll still be able to like do what you want in your life, and you'll still have a say, and you can still work. But what if a man decides that you can't?
Yeah.
He has all the power in your system. Then you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like, this is why we say this whole submission thing doesn't make any fucking sense, and it's not good for anybody, because ultimately this is what it like devolves to.
Yeah. I think they want to say that it doesn't ultimately devolve into that because there is this factor that we're not considering. And admittedly, we do not consider this. We don't factor this into our understanding of the system. And that factor is like God's sprinkling of goodness over the whole thing, like his blessing, his support of this, whatever, which is essentially just magic, you know? And it also makes it to where you can't, like, they could not point to any kind of study that actually backs this up empirically particularly well. Like, if there is research that we pointed to that said like, hey, doing all this your way leads to this, then they would be like, oh, well, that means that God didn't, bless that. They must have done something wrong because God didn't bless it. God wasn't involved, or else it would have worked. And you can be like, okay, well, then how about we only study marriages where God is involved? But you can't actually empirically demonstrate that God is involved with anything. So we're left to do nothing other than look at these systems through a secular viewpoint, an empirical viewpoint, in the way that we are, assuming basically it's methodological naturalism if you want to get, philosophical about it.
Well, and I think that they could also use the justification that, or the explanation that, well, for those marriages where people were really, really close to God and like honoring of God in their relationship, they were so honoring of God that the devil decided to attack them. Yeah. And that's why their marriage was destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, historically, the people who were claimed to be like possessed and persecuted by by demons and stuff, and Satan the most, like back in old Christian times, were the most pious people. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's who the devil hates the most.
Yeah. This guy right here.
It just, again, we're going to go back to just I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust that you're going to lead me because you're going to love me and you're willing to lay your life down for me. But that doesn't mean that I love working. It's my favorite thing ever. I don't even know what I do. Even when I have kids, like, I hope I can still work because we truly love it. We love it. So
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing. I am like, this whole people just have biblical submission so backwards, and I totally understand because I was there. I was like, submit to who? Are you crazy?
yeah.
Like, being a man in God's design is the most difficult position. Like, it is more difficult to be a man in power, right, who's leading, than it is to be the one who's submitting, because a man's sole purpose is to literally die to himself and prefer his wife and his children always. That's the
But again, like, when are husbands actually having to die for their wives and their children?
Yeah.
Like, yes, that does happen. You know, there's limited circumstances where that's happened. But in regular life, that's not ever happening. They're not actually having to, there's usually no point where they're having to like take on that responsibility. Meanwhile, women are called to submit every single day. And there are very like practical ways that they have to do that.
Yeah.
So again, it's just like, okay, like hypothetically, they have to like die for their family. But it's just like, but that hypothetical almost never happens.
Yeah. And so there's another form of like death that she might be talking about here, which is like death to self. Essentially
Like
means
ego death.
Yeah, it basically means like acting in a selfless way. You know, prioritizing people's needs above yours. And she says like, "Oh, it's so hard to be a man in power because it's hard to be a man in power and do that." Which I'll agree, it is very hard to be a man in power and like, you know, sacrifice your own interests for the interests of others, because I think that power is fundamentally corrupting. But here's the thing, is that men in power can get around that effectively by just using their power to essentially redefine what selfless even
Exactly,
means.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, and that's what they've done. I mean, they don't understand this, but Pauline Christianity seemed to be rather egalitarian. Like, there were women and men apostles, and then someone forged letters in his name later, using their power as a man in the church in a still generally patriarchal culture in, you know, Greco-Roman times, to say that like, well, no, men can do all these things and women have to like shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah.
And now you're still parroting that, and basically a man has like redefine things so that he could be selfless while actually being the most selfish you could possibly imagine a man being.
Well, and I mean, there's even modern day examples of that. If we just look at Trump and what he's doing right now by rounding up, you know, as he says, on undocumented immigrants and tearing families apart and shipping moms and dads and tearing them away from their family and shipping them back to countries that they might not even be from.
Yeah.
He's redefined that to seem like selfless and like he's just, you know, being sacrificial because he's doing this for the American people.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like you're again idealizing this, but like how does this practically happen? And like you were saying, the more power you have, the harder it's going to be to kind of resist that corrupting force. And in the case of Trump especially, he's pretty fucking corrupted.
He's entirely corrupt.
Yeah, like I don't think there's any like authenticity left to that man at all. And so he's painting a picture of himself as this like selfless, like sacrificial hero for the American people. But then when you look at what he's actually doing, it's like for the furthest from sacrificial and like selfless.
Yeah.
It's all completely just to get himself more power and especially more money. And I think honestly, to protect himself from going to jail, because if he wasn't president, he would have gone to jail by now.
100%.
Point. So actually, the woman is in a very good position if you are with a man who truly follows the word of God and follows Jesus.
Sorry, not to pause again so quickly, but again, there's that if. Yes, if. Everybody has good intentions going into a relationship. Everybody thinks that they're marrying somebody that's trustworthy, but like shit happens and sometimes people change and they don't always change for the better. And you have to have a way to be able to escape that if you're the victim of abuse, which is something that happens to a lot of women.
Yeah.
It's something entirely different if you're with someone who doesn't know Jesus, doesn't know the Bible, and is telling you to submit. That's not what we're talking about. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, these are things that you have to educate yourself on, that you have to read on, that you have to read the Word of God so you actually understand, and you don't get yourself into a situation with a man who doesn't even know Jesus and is telling you to submit and is abusing you and treating you wrong. Like, let me tell you one thing. Jesus doesn't stand for women being mistreated, abused, left, cheated on. Like, that's not anything that he stands for.
Before we continue, I've been drinking AG1 every morning for years now.
Now he's just going into a weird supplement commercial.
Yep.
Which is, AG1's like a separate brand. I don't think
it's
that's
not
his own
brand.
like neurotropic whatever bullshit. But well, that was a video.
It was certainly one of the videos of all time.
I think the main thing that we should end on with all of this is putting aside all of their like nonsensical bullshit arguments for why women need to submit. We need to keep in mind that all three of these people are actors at the end of the day.
Yep.
And really, the content of this video doesn't matter as much as the fact that they're just doing it just to have content out there so they can make money.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, all it is for them, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, if Chris Williamson really cared about, talking about that tension between, this biblical womanhood idea they have and the repression that it causes and, like progress or whatever, if he really wanted to push forward a conversation on women's rights for the good of women, he wouldn't have these paid shills on to talk about this. He'd have somebody else, right? So, yeah, that's a great point to end on. Yeah. This is all fake in the first place.
Yeah, it's all fake. I mean, if he really wanted to push that conversation forward, he'd have like a licensed family therapist or something who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think because, sorry, I know we kind of tried to close it up already, but because he can kind of position himself just like Joe Rogan, where he's like, oh, I'm just asking questions. And he has like plausible deniability. And like, I'm kind of like, you saw him kind of push back a little bit in like the nicest way possible to some of the things that they were saying. But what happened at the end of this video? Nothing. Like,
yeah,
he didn't change their minds on anything. And he's just using them, which this video actually didn't get that many views, but he's just using them to make content and that's it. And like, Girls Gone Bible just happens to be one of the most popular podcasts for religious women. And so he had them on because they're popular, not because they have anything of value to say.
Yeah. Oh boy, this one got really heated. Didn't it get more passionate than you kind of expected?
I just, when it comes to Girls Gone Bible, I just like, I can't with them. I always end up getting really heated because they say the dumbest shit. Thank you guys so much for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons who helped make this video possible. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Taylor_the_antibot. And if you'd like to consider supporting this channel financially, a link to my Patreon will be down in the description, and we'll see you on the next one. Say bye.